Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and so honored. I recently had surgery, and while I could probably take this off, because I am from Long Island and I use my hands a lot when I speak, I would probably harm myself in the course of this speech. So it will be on with me for the next 20 minutes. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am an executive at ESPN handling PR over college sports. That is my dream job. I just recently took on that role. I'm a former Division I athlete at Syracuse University, an All-American, academic All-American. I'm 33. I'm an aunt. I'm a daughter. I've traveled overseas a lot by myself, okay? A lot to Spain and to Ireland, never with a tour. You know, I've done all these things. I'm not very exciting in the social realm. I've had a few boyfriends, never worked out too well. But now I can also say that I am a sexual assault survivor. And that is the first time I've ever said that to a room full of people I do not know. So this is a big moment. I'm shaking a little bit, but, and I don't know what you think about me, if you've read my story. All I know is that ever since writing the article with Erin Zamet-Ruddy, who's a phenomenal writer, by the way, you should read her story because she lives with cancer. She wrote the story with me, with Marie Claire. Ever since, I have had people tell me that they were surprised that someone like me was sexually assaulted. They say, Keri, I cannot believe this happened to you. I cannot believe someone like you. And I know what they mean, and I'm okay with that. I think it's fantastic, and that is exactly the reason I wrote the story, and I went public. We are everywhere, okay? Sexual assault survivors are everywhere. Now look at this room. I am not the only one in here, by a lot. Statistically, in the United States, 1 in 6 women will be the victim of attempted rape or completed rape. That is a heinous number. Every 2 minutes, someone is sexually assaulted in this country. Okay, so by the time I'm done speaking, that's 30 new victims. 60% of sexual assault crimes are not reported. So now you have 40% are actually reported, and of that, 16% of the rapists will ever spend a day in jail. You do a little math, add the underreported percentage, you've got 6% of rapists ever spend a day in jail. That is 15 of 16 walk free. That is an awful number. That means that rape in this country is a crime without consequence. If you're going to pick a crime, that should be the one. Crimes with much less effect on the victim, of much less stature, have a higher conviction rate. It's an attack. What could be more important than an attack on someone's personal sovereignty to decide what happens to their own body? And this is a crime that goes almost without consequence. Now, I was not raped, to be clear, okay? I was a victim of attempted rape. I was sexually assaulted. I had a man shove his hands down my pants and harm me. I was locked into a room, and I was told I could not leave. I was hit in my face, and I had to endure a brutal physical attack until I decided to fight back and then almost kill myself to get away. I got away, and I went to the US Embassy, and I decided to file a police report. And you know what was going through my mind at that time was a college professor I have who's still there. She's an amazing woman. She was brutally raped and attacked in her hometown by someone who she never saw. His face was covered, and he got away, and she never had a day in court. She walked in fear, wondering if he was next to her at the checkout line. And I thought of her in that moment. I said, how dare I consider leaving? How easy it would be to get on that plane. I beat myself up mentally. I didn't need to do that because I was already beaten up, believe me. But I said, this is what I have to do. This is the right thing. And what that meant was a 2-year commitment to pursue and prosecute my attacker. I was angry. I was not sad. I was not crying. I was mad. This guy had tried to take from me the opportunity to meet my husband, okay, to have children, to see my parents grow old. But I don't consider this a tragedy. I consider mine a good story, even though Marco made me have membership in a disgusting club I never wanted to be in. Okay, that is the words of one sexual assault survivor. Sexual assault is gaining membership to a club you never wanted to be in. when I decided to go public, it's because I wanted, much of what you talked about, Hillary, is that I want people to understand I am not ashamed, and you should refuse to be ashamed, and you should talk about it, and you should tell people about it. I hoped that by going public, I would hear from women who had done what I had done, who'd prosecuted overseas. It was an incredibly isolating experience. I had no one to tell me if I should have hired a lawyer in Rome. Was it okay that I got one in Milan? What should I be doing? Is this really even worth the effort? Am I putting myself in harm's way? I don't know what I thought, but I just thought that people would write to me and we would develop a resource, and there might be a logo involved and a fight back woman. I thought, we'd say to each other, are you an FBW? Like, there'd be some kind of like code word or whatever. And I did that because right before the article was published, I said, I'm going to set up this blog, and I want people to follow me in my journey. I didn't want it to end in Marie Claire. I wanted full disclosure, and if you ever go to the site, if you've ever been there, I will show you my hospital report. I will show you my injury photos. I will show you, I have put up my police report, my escape route, some of my personal struggles with issues, about the recovery. I have a lot more to come. Where I am on the site right now is just about to start my my interrogation with the prosecutor. She had called me back to Rome, and I'm about to get into how horrible an experience that was for me on my blog. So please go there after this so you can learn about that. I want to remove the fear, and I want people to understand all the different elements, so it's just not so scary. So you can say, yeah, that was really hard, but prosecution is just like anything else. It's really tough. It's really worth it. And for me, it was really therapeutic. Maybe not for everyone. Again, I was not raped. Okay, I was not shattered into a million pieces like so many women are. But for me, this was a good thing, and it helped me heal. It helped me maybe be a better member of society and better person to my fellow woman. So since we're here and we're at a school, and I just thought I'd put together some lessons that I've learned in the theme, in the spirit here. The physical aspect of the crime. I cannot say this enough, and I speak about this in any chance I get, is that the fight or flight mechanism is just an amazing evolutionary trait. Your body will do amazing things for you when you are in mortal danger. Know that. You need to know that. But even better, you need to try to have some practice at that. And I talk about self-defense and the importance of taking self-defense classes, or at least considering it. It teaches you how to think, and it teaches you what to expect and what to anticipate. And they say 99% of the success rate a rapist will have with you is winning the battle of your mind. Because while your body is going through an amazing change, you are getting tunnel vision, you are losing your auditory responses, all the things your body will do during mortal danger, that is the time that someone can break your spirit because you don't know what the heck is going on. I'm one of the only people on record that talks about self-defense being a success in how I defended myself. And I've heard from so many self-defense experts. I mean, that's the thing about this. I thought I'd hear from women who'd been attacked overseas, but the majority of people who contact me are people who want me to talk about this. So if anything you take from this when you walk away, please look into it. It's the best thing you can do. You can do amazing things to someone trying to harm you. You have power. You just don't know it. And women aren't taught that. They're not taught to think that way. We outsource our protection to guns and to police and to men, and it's really about what you're able to do for yourself. The psychology of being assaulted. For me, I was quite resilient. I was angry, and when I am angry, I am very good. I am safe in my anger. But it had, for me, a kind of a sustained assault on my ability to process difficult things. A relationship breakup, a bad day at work, kind of lowered my just ability to handle things. It gnawed at me in really subtle ways. I kind of got sick a lot. I had an inexplicable rash that steroids could not kill. And it came and it went without any, with rhyme or reason. And I probably should have visited a psychologist much more than I did. So I will admit that to you. I probably should have gone. I think I was just so committed and focused on my court case and found so much purpose and meaning in that, but I didn't take care of myself the way I should have. So that's something I definitely learned. In reporting the crime overseas, here's some lessons. Okay, so the smartest thing I ever did there was I waited till I got to the embassy to file my police report. I had 3 Carbonari enter my room an hour after the attack because the embassy had actually made a mistake, and instead of calling a first aid unit to attend to me, they called the police. And these men entered my room and they tried to force me to go with them. They wanted me to go to the police station with them and tell them what happened and point out the criminal. Now, mind you, my attacker had lived in Rome for 20 years and knew everybody. That is part of the reason I was comfortable with him. Everyone seemed to know him. All the shop owners, everybody waving at him, Marco, Marco, when we walked down the street. I've seen, I live in Hoboken. I've seen a lot up in New Jersey, okay? We have some stuff going on up there. I did not trust going with the police in a place that I did not know. And I had seen or read about Amanda Knox and how she did not have an official English translator with her, okay? I tell you that because having an interpreter was a fantastic thing that the embassy did for me. At the same time, it did not prevent me from having a lot of problems and errors in my police report. I had 4 major errors in there despite having an interpreter. She didn't know words like purse, pocketbook. I spent 5 minutes explaining what one of those was. The fact he tried to wrestle me for my pocketbook and take this item from me was the first indication to me that he was going to assault me. And yet that never appeared anywhere in the police report because she didn't understand it. So these are the kinds of things that overseas you can't place a value on, invaluable. There was no one to hold my hand or console me. Being a sex assault victim is awful no matter where you are, especially in a country where culture is different. I had the psychologist for the police department invite her graduate class in to observe me during my questioning. So without my consent, I just turned around and there were 20-year-olds looking at me. And I just remember sucking it up and saying, I'm just gonna get through this, but this is, wow, I've never heard of this. I have no idea, does this happen to other victims? And the best thing I did in reporting this crime, and the best thing you'll ever do when you're attacked in any way, shape, or form for any crime, is you tell the truth. There is an unassailable nature to telling the truth, and I mean the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, I had wine. I had 1.5 glasses, I had some Chianti, I had some Pinot Grigio. Yes, Marco kissed me. He kissed me 4 times, twice here, twice there. There is a freedom in telling the truth because you do that, it's not gonna come back to haunt you. I don't care what you think. You think about, people might think about you having alcohol, all these stereotypes and all these things. It's unassailable. And I'll get back to that because it actually really did come save the day. And this is the good stuff. Okay, so we're gonna talk about law and culture. And anything I say here is, I'm not a xenophobe, believe me. There are good things and bad things about our legal system and the Italian legal system. And I had to hire an attorney in Italy per the law there in order to have any information about my case shared with me. So I filed my report, and technically, if I didn't hire an attorney, the prosecutor, I would just never know whatever happened. They had no obligation to me, and it wasn't like she was gonna call me up on the phone and tell me. So I hired an attorney. As a State Department representative told me, the Italian system is no better, it is no worse, it is just slower. And why is it slower? It is slower because the courts are practically bankrupt, and they are backlogged by, I think now, maybe 3 million. It was 5 million at the time of my case. And this is because the appeals system is a very active part of their judicial system. Appeals overturn or reduce approximately, I think it's 2/3 of convictions. It is a given that if you get sentenced, then you go to appeals, and that your sentence will be reduced. It's just part of the system there. Also, lawyers, anyone, they love to strike. Okay, in Europe, it's part of their belief about working, and so there I am waiting on January 22nd, 2010 to find out if I'm going to trial or not, and I wake up that morning, and I have my coffee, and I'm ready to go, and I get an email that all of the lawyers in Italy decided to strike that one day, and one day only. One day. And my case now, I have to wait another 4 months. These were the things that were like strikes to my heart every day. And this is what's different, okay? I'd have never heard of that here in this country. Maybe it has happened where all the lawyers can go on strike. I have no idea. But these are the kinds of things you have to get used to. And you have to develop a sense of humor. Regarding criminal procedure, they do not have a jury there. It's a panel of judges. I don't know what you think about that. I don't know what I think about that. It's just different. But what is different And what I think is worse if you are a sexual assault victim is that the defendant does not take an oath, so he's never in danger of perjuring himself. There's a sympathetic view toward the defendant, more so than here, in that he can refuse to bear testimony. He doesn't have to answer questions if he's on the stand, if he doesn't want to answer when he doesn't have to. He can give spontaneous outbursts. He can contribute whatever he feels like contributing when he's on the stand, unasked. And it's expected that he can lie, and he can lie. So think about that. You are a victim of sexual assault. We all know that the victim is the one that's usually put on trial, even in this country, when you do have an oath to take. Now you're putting me in a situation where he's already gonna lie. Who wants to admit to doing what he did to me? And the court system allows for that. I will never accept that. And for me, that was the hardest part. It kept me up at night thinking of the awful, awful lies he would have to come up with about me. I've led a clean life, and it didn't matter. He could say whatever he wanted, and we all know the power of suggestion. Whether he could prove it or not, the power of suggestion, the cultural views of sexual assault, and what goes on between a man and a woman, I think that put me at a huge disadvantage, so I had a lot of concern about moving forward to trial. Another part is a defendant can be informed of precisely of what the plaintiff has said about him, which is fine. But they can also, the police will sit there and present to him the evidence they've already collected before he gives his official statement. So Marco gave 3 statements. Let me share that with you. In the hours after I was assaulted, he called the police. He said he was screwing some American girl. She freaked out, got upset, and jumped off his building. Hours later at the police station, and this is my favorite one, he said, oh, some American girl kind of wheedled her way back upstairs to his apartment and tried to steal from him. And then I jumped off the balcony like a cat burglar. That's my favorite one. I think I look very James Bond-like in that explanation. In his statement 2 months later, after a lot of the evidence had been collected, okay, this collection happened in about 24 hours because this was not a sustained time I knew him. He provided a very sanitized version that just coincidentally kind of wove itself around every piece of evidence that they had and everything that I had said and everything the witness had said. And Marco says, you know, he met me, I made him buy me drinks, I made him take me upstairs twice, and I got nervous, and then I jumped off a balcony, and he tried to save me, and he hurt his elbow. He's very upset about that. That's what's different. Okay, when you're dealing with an international system, it's things like that that are very hard to understand or respect when it is you who is the one bringing the charges. Plea bargaining. Now, this is something I did like. Since a prosecutor cannot drop a serious charge, if a defendant agrees to plea bargain, he has to admit to that serious charge. It's not like in the States, you're accused of murder, you say, I'll admit to it, but it goes on the books as manslaughter. That's not possible in Italian law. All the bargaining is about is the sentence. So let me tell you, Marco pled guilty to sexual assault and personal lesion, which is simple assault, the punch to my face. I love saying that. Marco pled guilty. I love that. That to me was the victory in all of this. No, he never spent a day in jail. If in the next 5 years he misbehaves, he will. And someone might be saying a prayer toward that. But I know that I caused him enough discomfort that he had to basically say, yes, I tried to force myself on a woman. I hit women. She found it so revolting that she'd rather throw herself off a building 6 stories high than suffer my touch. That's a big thing, especially in the Italian culture, for a man to have to admit that, and he knew that, and that is why he did not want a trial. The pre-trial judge said the weight of the evidence was such that he would not be absolved of the crime. And to me, that was a victory. And what I learned about the human spirit during this is that there is no other human that will push as hard, fight as hard, or find as much meaning in what you are doing than you. People will tell you, you don't have to do it, you can give up, no one would think less of you. I know that comes from a loving place. You just have to press on. And the people who truly loved me and supported me unconditionally throughout this experience, they revealed themselves to me. And the ones who didn't, they're gone. and I couldn't be happier about it. You don't need that. You don't need people wanting to try to be your hero or use your opportunity or try to make you do what they think you should do. And again, back to the issue of personal sovereignty, this is still a matter that is somehow very much up for debate in our society. We really like crimes that are black and white, very clear criminal and victim. And I have not seen many people, not a lot of people have said to me, you deserve this. I never had that. I'm very fortunate. I've seen some anonymous blog posts, but I just find it an intolerable notion that people will even debate that a woman should expect, live in fear, consider that the right to what happens to her body is somehow in someone else's hands. It's between me and it's between God, and that's it. And I think every man and woman should find that an intolerable notion. And if you hear someone say something counter to that, challenge them. I do. Tell them, bring it back to them in the personal. Say, what about your sister, your mother, your daughter? It's very easy to pass judgment when it's not personal. When it's not someone you know, and I have had people at work, again, tell me they have taken my article and sent it to their daughters, and that it has changed the philosophy because they know me. Okay? It challenges what they think a sexual assault victim looks like, should look like, maybe why she did what she did. And throughout this, I must say, I underestimated the kindness of people. I had some fear. Being at ESPN and what I do, we had a lot of shots taken at us by other media members, and there's blogs and all sorts of fun stuff on Twitter, but I had fear, and I had amazing, amazing support from my coworkers at ESPN, from my executives, from fellow journalists at rival media outlets, and it almost ruined my enjoyment of the day the article came out. On November 9th, the day that article came out, it was a tsunami of social media support, and my inbox just, I couldn't keep up fast enough, and it's like the world had opened its arms, and it was overwhelming, and I felt a little bit ashamed that I had such a low opinion of maybe what I thought people would do when they heard about what happened to me. Through this journey, the biggest change has been that I enter a room, especially at work, and people already know the worst thing that has ever happened to me, okay? That's an upper hand. I'm a competitive girl. To walk into a room like that, especially at work or with work colleagues, it's not the best feeling, but it says this is who I am, and I never had a problem with that. I really own this experience, so I get that. And it's also, I make jokes about this. I made jokes with the students before, but if I ever want to date again, it's all out there on Google, okay? So you already know the worst thing that happened, something very personal that happened, and I like to think of it as a weed-out system. Only the strong need apply. If you know of anyone, no. Kidding, I'm kidding. I own it, again, that's all part of this. I'm okay with that. Okay, this is who I am, that's what I'm saying through this experience and with what I've done. Having had a window into the absolute terror of realizing I was about to be raped, I am no longer immune to hearing other people's stories. I don't just flip the channel and I don't just turn the page. I stop and I actually think about that woman and what she went through, because I know exactly that moment when you're going, this is about to happen to me. This is so awful. I can't believe this is going to happen to me. And I like that I empathize that way. And I was upset with myself that I ever was so flippant or dismissive of other people's pain. Again, because they're everywhere. 1 in 6 women, okay? When you're in a concert, when you're on a bus, when you're at a football game, they're everywhere around you, and they're carrying this hurt around with them. And that's the other huge lesson here, is that we all have our personal struggles, and it's not just sexual assault, but people are carrying a lot of pain around with them. We all have awful experiences, and it's just made me more cognizant of that. I'm just a kinder person. I have an allowance for people now. They're a little attitude with me some days or something. I don't get that worked up about it. We all have our struggles, and believe me, for 2 years, a little feisty sometimes at work, okay? In personal relationships, caught me on a bad day. I had a really quick temper, felt very agitated a lot. these are things that happen when you're struggling. People are struggling every day. And to that, I know for certain that God held my hand that night. I know he heard me cry out in my fear and my desperation when I was on the roof. And I almost slipped and fell 6 stories because I was just so freaked out about what I was going to do to get myself out of this situation. He was with me every step of this process, and he brought me back to my Christian faith in a way that I had not previously respected it or understood it or come to rely on it. Until Italy, I used to speak to God every day, but I always felt guilty because I had a pretty good life, and I felt like, go focus on the Congo or Sudan. They really need you. I'm good. We're good here. And then I read this passage in The Purpose-Driven Life that says, God uses circumstances to develop our character. We are like jewels shaped with the hammer and chisel of adversity. If a jewel's hammer isn't strong enough to chip off our rough edges, God will use a sledgehammer. If we're really stubborn, he uses a jackhammer. He will use whatever it takes. I consider my Italian experience my personalized jackhammer sent straight from above. And I think, like many of the students in this room today, maybe the people that came to hear me, I've spent years searching for a cause that I could contribute to in a meaningful way. And sometimes the cause finds you when you least expect it, when you're on the last night of your Italian vacation. And I am still feeling my way through all of this. I'm trying to be careful not to take on too much, not to speak out of turn, and definitely not to squander the platform I've been given. But like many of you actively seeking to become a change agent, it's really a great responsibility that should not be taken lightly. But if at all possible, I think it's a responsibility that should be taken and taken gladly. Thank you.
We have time for a couple questions. If you raise your hand, we'll get a microphone to you. Bob.
Thank you. First off, you're in my prayers. But I've done some reading about post-traumatic stress disorder. You mentioned about taking care of yourself or wish you'd done that better. Did anybody tell you that you may have that from your incident?
Yes, my company was amazing in that, first of all, they sent someone on the ground to help me while I was still in Rome. They sent someone to come find me that night. The minute I got back to the States, they sent me straight to a psychologist who specialized and dealt with a lot of people after 9/11. We had a lot of executives, a lot of staff that were just very upset, clearly. And I went to the psychologist twice that week, and what he said to me, and I don't know if it was, I think this was a good thing, and to a certain extent, I think it was a kind of a bad thing, is that he said to me, I said to him, I don't know why I'm not devastated and crying. Okay, I'm just mad, and I'm going to move forward here. I'm not having nightmares. I don't understand. And he said, there's 3 kinds of responses. There are people who are devastated, just changed by experiences like this. There are people who get very upset, and then they're able to kind of put it in their past. And then there are people who are able to just look at something instantly and say, God, that was awful, and just move on. And that's called being resilient. And he said to me, Keri, you're really resilient. All the way you've handled this, the way you didn't shut down, and the way you move forward, and now you have purpose, you're resilient. And you will probably have minimal damage from this, as long as you check yourself, make sure you're not isolating yourself, and keep an eye on yourself. And so I was aware of it, but then I got so busy in the actual day-to-day of the case and going to study, and I would go find bookstores that had old Italian books because I couldn't afford to buy them. These things are like $400. I was writing letters that I made that my therapy, and I didn't really realize that for someone who's resilient, this is how stress exhibited itself. Just little stuff. These rashes and getting sick a lot and just being agitated, and I was angry with myself. I'd get real mad at myself. I'd smack my hand. I'd smack myself when I got upset at something. No one told me that that was part of it. And I still do talk to someone, and I'm going through some exercises to try to remove a little bit of the sting, because when I think back on Marco stalking me around the table, making fun of me, took my scarf off me and was just making fun of me, I have a visceral reaction. I can get very upset. I don't like that. I don't like that he gets to still reach into my brain that way, so.
Hallie?
Keri, thank you for coming. My name is Hallie Schaffner. I'm a Clinton School student. I was wondering if you could speak to the issue of alcohol and the cultural notion, especially on college campuses in the United States, that if a girl drinks too much, then sexual assault is her fault, and oftentimes how it's so ingrained in our culture that she even thinks that, oh, if I hadn't drank that second beer or that second glass of wine or whatever.
I'd absolutely like to speak about that because, believe me, I found myself saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. I had 1.5 glasses over 6 hours, a huge pasta deal. Like, this had no place in it. Why was I saying that? Because I knew exactly what you're talking about. I didn't want anyone for a minute to think or give him an out, to be able to roll their eyes and say, oh, you were drunk, you were flirty, and what you're saying is not quite true because you weren't really paying attention. There were a lot of circumstances that happened in my case that were just, I was so lucky. I'm not a big drinker. I had receipts from things. I had witnesses. I had people who saw me when I had the drink. I was very fortunate. But what I can tell you is until that mindset changes, it's always going to be there. And being drunk and being incapacitated, living the society we live in when you are susceptible, I think it's awful. I think it's awful on many levels that is the reason so many rapists walk free. I don't know how to resolve that. And you can sit there and say, well, you need to be perfect. Don't ever get drunk. Well, that's really not the problem. The problem is that it's acceptable to force yourself on someone, that you're able to have no regard for someone, that you want to attack the weak by, being drunk, unable to defend yourself. I don't have an answer for that, and I'm very careful. I'm careful because I know that's how so many rapes happen. And I don't know what the answer is. I know that I was lucky, but I also know that I played right into that stereotype, right into that stigma. I was very vigilant about making sure they knew exactly how much I had to drink. And Marco tried. He tried in his police report to insinuate, but he couldn't prove it. Okay, there were no witnesses, but it is going to be a part of every rape case anytime alcohol is involved that assumption's made, and I don't know what you do about that. I really don't.
Thank you for coming. I wanted to ask your opinion of this latest twist in Amanda Knox situation of the media and a movie being made and so on. Will that influence a panel of judges if she goes back before them? Will they feel insulted by the fact that they may be made light of in American media?
I want to be very careful in how I answer that because they seem quite fond of slander cases in Italy. Her parents are now unable to leave the country and they have to stand trial for slander. And she stood trial for slander. So I don't want to stand trial for slander. But what I will say is what happened with Amanda Knox really influenced a lot with how I was handling my case. Marching headlong into a trial, I thought it would be just outrageous. I thought American girl going after beloved Italian son of a famous artist. I thought it would be a spectacle, much like her. I had so much fear about it. I know the evidence I had in my case Okay, I had a ton. They found my jewelry. They found my broken bracelet. They found my blood on his pants, so he couldn't say my injuries happened after I left him. I had witnesses. I had American couples balcony I landed on, Americans in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Okay, I had one thing happen after another that was just, it was a lock. And I still wasn't able to get him in jail. Okay? The evidence, and I have read extensively because I am very curious about what is going on with her. You would hope that there would be a modicum of that evidence, strength that I had to put someone away for 25 years. And they don't, and I think it is cultural, and I think there is so much more going on there. I think it's the point of no return, it is pride, it's a cultural us versus them mentality, and I don't know where it ends. For a while, I was feeling pretty good that this whole appeals process, like we'll give her the thing, we'll make our statement, and then we'll overturn it so everyone's happy. I don't know that that's gonna happen. I do know when my story came out, I was approached by a few movie houses about a movie. I know a lot said they couldn't because of this, because it's already being done with the Amanda, and I was cool with that, believe me. That's how I'm intertwined with her. I don't know if I've answered your question, but those are my thoughts on it. I think they broke her spirit too. I've seen pictures of her and she looks a lot different now. She used to smile a lot and she just looks beat up.
You mentioned, this is just about the Italian judicial system. You mentioned that the defendant did not have to take an oath. If you had gone to trial, would you have had to take an oath, or could you discuss that?
I actually don't know that. I never got that far. But that's what I wanted to say in terms of telling the truth. I was consistent throughout. Nothing would have happened different at trial than what I'd already given in my reports and whatever I gave to the State Department. But they don't give oaths, so I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have had. That's just not part of their belief system. But I wouldn't have lied anyhow, so I was fine.
Talking about the going back to trying dating or anything, do you ever feel like there may be a perception that you're from men that you're used or you're broken, or that you may be unattractive to them now after this?
Oh, I think for sure. I think, the one thing is people say to me, like, are you okay? It's been 2 years. No one even knew at work. I went through a promotion. I worked my butt off. I've excelled. I don't know what people think you're supposed to look like or how you're supposed to act. Again, I say it's a weed out system. Someone may assume I'm broken. If you meet me, I don't think you'll think that. I don't want you trying to date me if you think that. I hope someone looks at it and says, other than the fact that you should live in fear that I might kick your butt as well if you get a little sassy with me, a little fresh, all right? That's on the table, but I'm just kidding. I hope someone finds it endearing, charming.
In hindsight, the criminal mind, the male, do you think he had a plan going in all the way, or does a switch flip?
Okay, let me tell you about that.
And secondly,
okay.
why are you in Little Rock? Are you on tour?
Oh, no. I just came for this.
Story. We had Grant Wall, the Sports Illustrated editor, last September, and we became friends on Twitter and whatnot. And he tweeted her story when it came out and said, "This is an amazing story." So I read it and then contacted her.
It's my first public speak about this because I've been so busy with my new job, and I actually just wanted this to be the first place I talked about it. So my thought with Marco was that the first time I went up and saw his patio where he did his work, let me tell you, a lot about that was me, again, being competitive. He was sitting there telling me he'd had Robert De Niro up there during the Roman Film Festival, and I'd been a publicist for film at ESPN the last 7 years, and I know Robert De Niro's publicist. He represents many stars. He's a lovely man, and I felt like Marco was kind of name-dropping a little bit, and I'm thinking, yeah, why would this guy be on your patio? Went and saw it, And I do remember at one point he tried to lure me over to a little room on the side of his patio where he keeps his bags, but I just didn't go over toward it. It was just a dark corner, and I don't know what it was. I just didn't go. And then we left. We left and went out and met my friend, and I think back that might have been the first time he was trying to test to see what a self-defense expert will tell you, by the way, is a predator will test your boundaries. They'll do little assaults to see where they can gain a foothold. Okay, so little things like that. He already saw that he could get me alone, right? He couldn't lure me into a dark corner just yet, so we went out and he tried to get me a few drinks. That didn't happen. I didn't really drink. Then he hit me with the guilt, which was, I've had such a nice night. Why won't you come up? I've been a gentleman. And he locked that door, and I never saw him do that, and that tells me everything. He absolutely intended to assault me. But I don't think he went into it thinking he was going to kill me. And I tell people this, okay? It got so out of hand with him, okay, because he did not expect the reaction I had. He did not expect that I would fight as hard as I did. And I can tell you, he never thought that someone would go over a balcony willingly and say, I'd rather try this than stay around you. But I think, too, there was a case in Connecticut, in Yale, about 2 years ago. A young medical student, they found her body stuffed in a cable chase. She missed her wedding. The man is standing trial right now. Just a lab technician, no criminal history. Just had a kind of a heated argument with her, and the allegation is that he just put his hands on her. He got a little just crazy. The minute he put his hands on her, he knew she was going to leave that room and his life was about to change. He wound up murdering her. Okay? Stuffed it in a chase. Things get out of hand when your plan goes awry, and I absolutely think Marco would have murdered me, because now we are fist fighting, and the only way you are going to rape me is if you make me incapacitated, you knock me out, or you kill me. And then what do you do with me afterwards? And that was my thought when I was with him, and that is my thought after. So I don't know that he was inherently a murderer, but I do think he's a rapist, and I think he could have been a murderer if I let him. Hope that answers the question.
It's coming.
I just wanted to say real quickly that I know a woman who was in Acapulco and was assaulted by a man. She was on a balcony in one of those tall hotels. She was on the 9th floor, and he made a pass at her, and she fell off the balcony.
She fell.
And what did save her, though, is there were a stack of chairs that they would have been cleaning, and so that she literally survived a 9-story fall. She was spent 3 months in the hospital with all the broken bones, but she did survive and went on to get married and have children.
Did she prosecute?
I don't think so.
Okay. I have not had one person, by the way, write to me who's ever prosecuted. I'm still waiting for the first person. I don't know what I think, that I'm a little disappointed. I can't imagine that there are women that have not done what I've done. I'm a little disappointed, but I think it's also because you just don't read about other women who've done it, and you think it's really hard, and it's not that hard. It's hard, it's not that hard.
Hi, I'm Nubia Torres. I work for Catholic Charities, and I work with victims of sexual assault and rape from other countries who are victims here.
Okay.
And I think it's important for people like you to say their story because, like you said, things with like translators, especially in small towns, people hear if they're victims of rape or sexual assault even by their partners, husbands or boyfriends. Once they're in jail and they're like, they don't have a translator, they have the brother of the assaultant translate, so
Right.
it ends up being, she never gets anything accomplished. So it's good that people like you tell their story so that maybe you could make other people, even here in the United States, more aware of the difficulties it is for you to be a victim when in a place where you have nothing. You have no family, no friends.
And you have to be vigilant, okay? I said when my interpreter read the report back to me, you can understand I'm 40 hours without sleep at this point, and they don't have ice in Italy, okay? No ice. I am swollen. I can see my own nose. I can see my eye, puffed out. And she reads the report back to me, and there were errors, and I demanded it get torn up and fixed. I don't know how many people have the wherewithal to do that, and I don't know if it's because I'm a pushy New Yorker, but you have to do that. You have to be vigilant. And that's the one thing I'd say. Don't just take the interpreter's words. Go have them go back over it. Ask someone else. Ask for a second interpreter. Those are the little things I would advise if you are a victim in another town, because the stuff that was left out of my report, the fact that he tried to steal my purse from me, I thought that was a huge one. I think it showed intent. He was trying to separate me from my ID and my wallet. And why would you do that if I'm already locked in? I didn't understand. They also made inaccuracies. I had water. I was sick. I had bronchitis. And much of the time I was on my date, I had water. One page actually said I was drinking wine. Well, now that's more wine than I admitted to in my statement. It doesn't make sense. That's a big problem. You've got a sexual assault victim, and you've just added a glass of wine to her evening. These are the kinds of things. I mean, I had an interpreter from the embassy. Don't think. They are experts, and they're there to help you. But you know what happened to you, and you just can't put it in their hands. You know, I didn't.
We have time for two more. Right there.
I do have a question about cost. It doesn't sound like it would be very, it does sound like it involved a lot of money, and also how helpful the State Department was to you.
Great question. Very good question. Two things. The embassy can help you just to a certain extent. They cannot provide you with legal assistance. They can send someone, if I did have a trial, to make sure that it was fair. I don't really know what that means, but someone to monitor it. They were the nicest people, Mina and Domenico over in Rome. They will help process the paperwork for you, act as a liaison with the police and the public prosecutor until you do get a lawyer. They will control the information, who gets what information on your case, based on what you tell them. Other than that, they're not that involved. And then regarding the cost, I had a lot of fear about that. And yes, I'm sure that is what's prohibitive to a lot of victims. But in Italy, if a person pleads or is found guilty, they pay your court costs. Also, during a criminal trial in Italy, you can also ask for civil damages. You can solve your civil damages with them before the criminal trial ever happens, and it doesn't influence the case. So there was a point there where my attorneys were talking to his family saying, we will settle the civil part of this, what's owed to Ms. Potts, before the trial. And it actually works for both parties usually, because the criminal does not want to go into a criminal trial and then have the court say you owe 200,000 euro. And the victim doesn't want to go into a trial and have a court say, great, you were assaulted, you get zero. I didn't want any money. I just wanted my court costs. I felt that to make this about money would have been, that would have invited a whole host of problems I would have deserved. But what I did do was I agreed, I had a lawyer and agreed to $5,000 a year, anything over than that, because all he was doing was keeping contact with the prosecutor by phone. There was a year of an investigation where there's no actual legal actions. You're asking basically for phone calls and some emails. And then we never went to trial. So when he pled, he had to pay whatever the costs were for their services. And my guys, I guess, submitted a bill for about 4,800 euro that Marco had to pay. And to me, that was worth it as well. Recently, I heard from them 6 months later. The day the article came out, the next day, I heard from my attorneys that they wanted another $8,000 from me without an itemized bill, without any justification. And I also fought that, and that didn't happen. So it's tough. There's worry. I had just bought a house and was worried about the cost, but I was investing in myself. I mean, how could I justify my $40 dinner on Friday night or my 10th pair of shoes? I just thought, this is ridiculous. It was so easy, actually, to make that decision. And again, I'm sure a lot of people can't, but it is just, it's worth, if it is worth it to you to say this ends here, this does not happen to Keri Potts, then you will put your money aside and you won't question it. That's what I did.
Hi.
I'm a senior at Arkansas Tech this year, and I was wondering, do you have any advice for, you mentioned college campuses, like I know several people that's been sexually assaulted, but again, they never admit it because they don't want to go through the embarrassment of it because they're in their classes or, you know, they're in the social realm. What advice would you give for young girls that haven't been assaulted to bring awareness to this?
Who haven't been assaulted, self-defense class, can't say that enough, again, because it'll make you think about your situations differently. Didn't prevent me from getting attacked, okay, but it helped me get out of the situation. It helps you learn how to think. And then I also think encouraging people that they know who are sexually assaulted to talk about it. You'll learn a lot from them. It'll probably change you. I just think you're given so many opportunities in life to have this happen to you, actually. And I was just telling the students beforehand, traveling alone through Spain months before the attack, I got in some situations where I was quite lost in a very, very confusing part of town where it was all men. There were so many other times where I should have been attacked or assaulted. You never know when it's going to come. I don't want girls walking around in fear. I just want them to be aware. And that goes back to the alcohol thing. I mean, you can't not live your life. I know college students, but try to minimize your risk. That's all. Go out with your friends. Never leave by yourself. That alone will reduce the amount of sexual assault. But we go off with people. You know, we put our trust in the hands of someone you don't really know. I've never had a one-night stand, ever. So many of my friends have. And they say, I cannot believe this happened to you. I said, I can't believe it hasn't happened to you. How has this happened to me? That's what I said for about 2 weeks. This is unbelievable. I had not kissed a boy in 2 years. 2 years. A few kisses, patting myself on the back. Look at you, Keri, woo. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. Just try to minimize, you know?